When we think about the future of work and where we want it to go, we really want to put humans at the center, right? We want to put people at the center and focus on the pieces of your work that require the most judgment, that require the most creativity, where you can shine and focus on the things that you need to do most. Echo AI is your digital twin. Imagine a digital version of you that understands everything you understand, knows everything you know, and can take care of all your busy work for you. This is not an assistant. It's not an AI worker. We want to create a digital version of you. So we want to understand, who are you working with? What are you working on? What do you know? What do you not know? What are you an expert at? What are you really good at? And then take all of that context down and then say, okay, how can we, knowing everything we know about you and your goals, take away that busy work for you? So if you needed to customize things for your client, right, it'll have all the context from your emails that have gone back and forth with your client, your documents that you have with the client. Some people look at this and they say, oh, that's terrible. It's like, on the other flip side, it's like, wow, this is actually a completely new kind of computer and a completely new way of approaching computation, and opens up all these opportunities that we haven't had before.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of AI Insights here in San Francisco. Today, I'm with Conor. He has launched a new product called Echo AI, and he's going to bring some more details about his background, about the company, and some insights for the future. Conor, thank you for joining here today.
Thanks for having me here, Rowan. Great to be here.
Thank you. What is Echo AI?
Echo AI is your digital twin. Imagine a digital version of you that understands everything you understand, knows everything you know, and can take care of all your busy work for you.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And how did you come up with the idea? Where is the idea coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent a number of years as a product manager at different tech startups, and I found that the piece of my job that required the most impact, that required reasoning and judgment, was coming up with product requirements, talking with customers, figuring out what we needed to build. But what I spent a lot of time on was updating status trackers and responding to Slack messages and following up on emails. And it was a lot of time just moving information around and coordinating with people. And when this whole AI wave happened, part of me thought, well, it seems like this is something that LLMs could be really good at, right? They traffic information, a lot of it is text. If it's just moving information around, couldn't there be a way for AI to help with that? I started actually using AI personally to write some of my Slack DMs, my email drafts, my messages, some of my docs. I found it to be really helpful, and then saw the opportunity to actually scale this and make a product that other people could use.
Nice. And then you have been working for other products before, and you have been working with AI before. How was your AI journey?
Yeah, so my AI journey has been really interesting. I first got really interested in AI around 2021. At that time, self-driving was a big thing. I actually did Andrew Ng's deep learning course, started learning about it, a lot about it, talked to a number of friends in the space. And then, the moment when I decided to make the jump into it actually wasn't B2B SaaS, it was AI music. And so I've been a music producer ever since I was 15. I played a bunch of instruments and got really interested in the space. Actually won a hackathon called Outside LLMs, focused on AI music. And there we built an Ableton Live plugin to the DAW to generate music directly. Spent about 6 months working on that. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a fascinating and fun project to work on. It was nice to kind of work on a passion project. But, I kept feeling this call of like, this is a really fun and interesting, and it's something I'm passionate about, but I think there's an opportunity to kind of completely transform how people work. And I wanted to devote the next 10 years to that. And so pivoted from working on AI music and kind of creativity to focusing on workflow tools instead. And it's been incredible. I mean, I think the technology is so new and it's changing every day. It's been fascinating to, you go to a hackathon and work on something, and then you see it in the news a few days later, or you're working on a new tool and you realize that you're maybe some of the people in the world that are furthest along in working on this and doing things nobody else does and nobody else really knows how to do. And so it's been a fascinating journey so far, and really fun to partner with other early stage startups and kind of figure it out together.
That's nice. And that is the follow-up question I want to ask for you. You told me that other companies that are providers, they're also under very early stage or like few years, how have been your experience dealing with other partners and other companies on the AI space?
Yeah, it's been fascinating, Rowan. It reminds me a lot of, I'm reading a book right now of how Jeff Bezos founded Amazon, and it's kind of similar to the early days of the internet. Everyone was kind of feeling around in the dark and not quite sure what this new tool could be used for and what business models make sense and what it could be used for. And it kind of feels like that now. We're all figuring it out as we go and figuring out how to use this technology and what the gaps are. And people sometimes make fun of AI applications. They're like, oh, this is just a GPT wrapper. And I was talking to a friend who's a founder, and he was like, the thing is, it's actually really hard to build a GPT wrapper. This is not something that's easy to do at all. It's been super interesting for us because some of the startups we're partnering with haven't even raised funding yet. We're working with this company, Plastic Labs, that builds a product called Honcho that helps us personalize our AI and personalize the responses. We actually got to talk to their investors as part of it, and it explained why we would be a great early customer. We're using another company called Deep Kali Labs that for our security. Using another company called Langfuse that's also a brand new startup launched in the last year or so. And so it's been really fun. I think we're all kind of figuring it out. This is what it's like working on a bleeding edge technology. I'm sure all of this will be figured out 5 years from now. But right now it's like, every day is kind of a new day, and every day you're figuring it out.
On Echo AI, what problem you're solving right now, and who is the target that you focus right now? Who is the persona you're looking for right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the problem that we are solving is, when you're an early startup, it's kind of easy to coordinate. You're all in a room together. You can kind of easily, you have all the same knowledge kind of uploaded to your mental RAM, as it were. You all have the same context. You understand things. It's easy to coordinate. As your company gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you add more teams and departments and information, suddenly there's these pools of information that are all over the place, right? And you need to spend your time coordinating in meetings or following up with people or checking in, hey, have you done this? Have you done that? Who owns this? Who knows this information? Our thesis is, when we think about the future of work and where we want it to go, we really want to put humans at the center, right? We want to put people at the center and focus on the pieces of your work that require the most judgment, that require the most creativity, where you can shine and focus on the things that you need to do most. And I think we can all agree, people were not designed to send follow-ups and update docs and respond to random questions. And so we would like to create an AI version of you that can handle all that busy work so you can focus on what you do best. I think a good analogy here is, people used to calculate things by hand, and then tools like Excel came out. And it's not like nobody uses numbers or data or Excel anymore. It's just they've gone one level up, right? Now you create a model in Excel and you think about, okay, what are the assumptions behind this? What's our view of reality? You focus on the things that require judgment rather than something that's routine. And what we're really excited about is kind of a future of work where we all get to focus on the pieces of work that we're really good at and that require hard decisions and judgment and have gray areas, and where you really need to think about it. And I think right now there's a lot of people in a lot of jobs that spend a lot of time kind of just moving information around.
Yeah, one thing that that is specific what I work right now, I'm doing follow-ups with the team, I'm doing follow-ups with the client, and are not questions that is a template, just copy and paste and change some things and send to the client. No,
fine.
Each client has a different project, there's a different requirement, and then you need to very personalize what you're asking for based on the previous conversations, on the previous communications. And I noticed that this has been very, very hard for me to follow up all that and take some at a time.
Definitely.
And what I've been using ChatGPT, but it is cut my time in half using ChatGPT, but still I need to put I need to personalize manually the way that I wrote. So I need to review again. I need to personalize again. I'm pretty sure your platform kind of understand who I am, understand the things I'm doing, and kind of as much content I produce as easier and more accurate it goes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we want to do, this is not an assistant. It's not an AI worker. We want to create a digital version of you. So we want to understand, who are you working with? What are you working on? What do you know? What do you not know? What are you an expert at? What are you really good at? Who are your closest colleagues? What docs have you worked on? What projects are you part of? And then take all of that context down and then say, okay, how can we, knowing everything we know about you and your goals, take away that busy work for you. So if you needed to customize things for your client, right, it'll have all the context from your emails that have gone back and forth with your client, your documents that you have with the client, and really give a personalized response that is similar to what you would have written yourself. And this is something where we're starting off with just kind of communication, so Slack, email, but we really see a lot of opportunity. I mean, imagine a world where you could send your Echo to a meeting for you, right? And talk to people on your behalf, and you could scale yourself, and it would respond to things and have a conversation. Imagine if instead of having a meeting with a colleague, you just put your two Echoes together and they kind of share context and get back and forth, and then bring the meeting summary to you and say like, oh, okay, great. Turns out we're all set. We have a path forward. Imagine if you're a frontline worker and you could talk with the CEO of your company every single day and ask them questions and ask them their context and what they're working on. And obviously there's limits in terms of what information can be shared. But communication is this thing that's not scalable right now, right? The bigger the company gets, the less time each person gets to spend with each other. And we foresee a world where just like connection and communication, AI can facilitate that and bring everybody closer together.
How does integrate the solution into the person's computer right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So our initial MVP was building out in Slack. So we connect directly to your Slack, and we'll suggest messages and responses for you. We'll suggest follow-ups. If somebody said they were going to send a document to you and they haven't sent it yet, you can follow up with them. We can even auto-respond on your behalf. If you're feeling bold and you want to turn it on, it'll respond while you're out of office. And if a colleague asks a question about, hey, where's this document, or who should I talk to about this, or what is we working on, it can respond to all of those messages on your behalf. It can also help you draft things. So let's say you have a message that you're trying to draft and you're like, well, I need more context than this. I need more guidance. It can help you with that. And so the starting point is in Slack, but again, we're planning to expand this out to all your communication mediums. And we really want to be platform agnostic. So, you start off in Slack, that's useful, but there may be other chat applications in the future. One of our theses is that with AI, a lot of software may become, you've heard of on-prem data. Now imagine on-prem software, right? Software that gets created by your company, in real time based on your preferences. We ultimately want to be this provider of like that digital version of you that is agnostic across platforms. Whatever chat looks like in the future, whatever meetings look like in the future, whatever you're doing to coordinate, we want to be able to kind of roll along with that and have this unique thing that is the digital you.
Nice. And how you separated what is the LLM general and the personalization? Because LLM sometimes have opinions that the person doesn't have it. How you can balance both?
Yeah, so I think the key thing when you're building with LLMs is it's really important to, this is the art of building a GPT wrapper, as people call it. Just taking the raw, okay, we're going to input a prompt, add some context, and then give it output is really not, it just doesn't cut it, right? You have to worry about things like hallucinations, for example. You have to worry about, the tone, and what the key is, not all questions require the same types of models. Not all questions require a large model, right? There's some kinds of questions that require a smaller model. Some questions require RAG, some don't. And so it's really about customizing it. And, you have this kind of interception of when, let's say, a question comes in. Okay, well, what type of question is this? Is it asking about a document? Is it asking about a person? Is it asking about, we have these like coordination channels, for example, like who's doing what? That's a whole category of questions. Another channel is like, okay, information about customers, information about code. Sometimes it's a request for a resource in a document. And so it's a very complex routing, actually. You can think of yourself as a human. We're almost like LLMs, right?
Yeah.
You like when you're working with a person in a remote environment. I worked at a company for 2 years remotely. Some of my colleagues I had never met in person. I met one of my colleagues in person for the first time a few months ago, long after I left. And so it almost feels like you're interacting with an LLM sometimes, right? You ask a question to the person and then they respond, and you prompt them, you ask a follow-up. And so our goal is like, okay, how can we take this wide variety of all the different kind of messages you receive and want to send, and how do we then route them and figure out the right pipeline that makes sense? Right. And, I think the key right now when you're differentiating as a startup is, again, it's not enough to just say, okay, we're going to tack GPT onto this. it's like you really need to be the one to get into the details and think through the edge cases and think through how this all fits together. And that's where the real value is, right? The moat is in doing the hard stuff and figuring it out and being like, oh, okay, this is a super edge case question. This person is asking for documents or this person is asking for clarification. Let's route it differently and let's put it through a different pipeline to get there. And figuring out like which questions need a large model, which questions need a small model. How do we think about things like latency in there? It's a lot of little details that gets to the experience feels seamless, but what's going on behind the scenes is incredibly complex. And that's where the value is, right? And that's ultimately you want a product that feels simple, even if behind the hood, there's a million different pieces of wiring holding it all together.
So there's a lot of personal data that the person's going to input there, the user going to input there. How do you manage permissions? How do you manage settings for what is allowed, what is not allowed, groups? How you can manage all that and make sure that a document that someone asks is going to the right person? For example, someone can go there and the sales team or the development team is like asking for a project manager, like, hey, how much costs this project? And I send you him, not the right person to send it. So how you can manage all that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And again, this is part of when people say, oh, you're just building a GPT wrapper, it's like thinking about nuances of things like that and who can actually receive it is where you get all the value in this product. And so there's a few different categories we think about. So first of all, there are things that are legally you should not be sharing, right? The RLM bot should never be talking about someone on your team's medical history or, HR questions or PII, or like there's whole categories of things that legally, like you should be careful when you're sending those messages to begin with, and your LLMs should certainly not be sending them. And then you have another category of things that's like, okay, well, let's say opinions on people, right? Let's say you don't like your boss. Obviously, you don't want that spreading around.
Yeah.
And so there's a level of sensitivity. And so understanding like, okay, what are the sensitive topics you want to be careful about, which is generally opinions about people. And then you have other things where like, well, this information is true. Let's say there are impending layoffs at your company. This information is true, but you need to be careful how you message it. Only certain people know this. It's restricted, or let's say you have, I don't know, IPO news or something else that can move the market. Part of our pipeline is when we look at a question, putting it through all these different filters and saying like, okay, is this information sensitive? Does it have PII? Is it an opinion about a person? Is it something that might be flagged in all these different ways? It's similar actually to what the big model providers go through when, making sure that ChatGPT can't be racist, for example. They go through this whole process of kind of red teaming it and testing it. And we do something very similar internally, but our requirements are actually very different from these public-facing models. It's much more about the kind of information that can be shared, data and sensitivity. We're exploring a number of different routes for that. One of them obviously is permissions and sharing. And so seeing what gets shared in public channels versus DMs, who has access to which documents, not sharing a document with somebody that doesn't have access to it. And kind of building this knowledge graph over time of like, okay, this is the information that I am allowed to know, and this is the information that you're allowed to know, and this is what I can share with you. And sometimes there are multiple stories in there, right? Sometimes there's like, okay, well, this is actually the true story, but this is, what I can share with you now, based off because the other thing hasn't been announced yet. And so it's very, very complex. But what we're trying to do with this is focus on, number one, safety above all, and we want to earn the user's trust over time. It's not something that's given. And so we actually won't step in if we think that there's any sensitivity involved with any of this. That's really something where, again, human judgment is required and human reasoning, and you need to understand those shades of gray. That's really not the kind of thing that our product should be used for. That's the first piece. And then the second piece is partnering with other providers. So we're in talks with a number of different folks for this. Deep Kali Labs is actually part of the same accelerator with us, which is 4Capital's founder in residence program. And we're having some conversation with them about how again, another startup, how can they partner with us and make sure that our platform is secure and that our data, that our system isn't sharing anything that shouldn't be shared. But it's a great question. It's something that's really important. And the other piece of that also is, a lot of companies have these anti-AI policies. How do we give them security that this data isn't being shared externally too, right? You think about data being shared internally with the wrong people, but obviously, there's corporate secrets in there. And so we're working on a number of different ways to secure that and, kind of disconnect that from any external sharing. And again, customers' trust and privacy is the most important thing to us, and we treat it with the highest level of respect. And we want to make sure that we are building a secure solution that people can trust and ultimately give their Echo the ability to take away their busy work.
Yeah. And what is the features that you're going to implement on the platform you're developing right now, or you want to do very soon?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, starting off with Slack, we're laser focused on kind of automating pieces of that. The key for us is, again, when we talked about that model, it's kind of the three parts, the input, the processing, and then the output. It's how do we expand both of those avenues? So for input, for example, the more data that we're able to bring in, the better image we can get of you as Rowan. So if you think about, okay, Slack is a good starting point. What's even better is, okay, now we have email, now we have Notion, now we have Google Drive, now we have your meeting transcripts. We have this vision of the future where you are connecting to all these different data sources, and every data source that you add in gives another layer of nuance, gives another layer of detail. And eventually, maybe in the beginning, you need to start editing some of the messages that it drafts for you. Eventually, you get to a point where you're like, wow, it knows me better than I know myself. Like, that's a great response. Of course, it would say that. Or you get to a point where, you have knowledge. When you think about knowledge in organizations, right, there's a hard drive versus RAM, right? Your hard drive is things like documents, things that have been written down. And then your RAM, so information that's kind of more real time, is like, okay, I just finished this document. I'm letting you know I finished it. I haven't updated it yet in the project management tracker. I haven't updated it in Asana or Jira. Or we just decided this in the meeting, but we haven't, we decided on a follow-up, but it's not documented anywhere. It's falling out. What we're really excited to is, starting off with, okay, there's all these things that are in documents. That's great. We want to move closer and closer and closer to the edge of real-time knowledge as possible. So how can we update this knowledge graph of what's going on and what's happening with, okay, you just talked about this in a meeting. Boom, we have the meeting transcript. Instantly, we know that, yes, the document says this, but the more recent update is what you just said in the meeting, or the more recent update is what you just said in Slack. And so it's bringing in all these different data sources and then compressing that and getting information that's actually real time. It's actually, a real-time capturing of how things are changing in the company. So that's on the input side. In the middle layer of the processing side, when you think about personalizing this, a search engine could give you, okay, this is what the document said, right? It's not enough to just think about what the document said. It's like, okay, what is your relationship between you and I? How do I like to communicate? How do you like to communicate with me? What's the power distance? Does this message require a short description, a long description? If my CEO asked me for a question, I probably wouldn't just send a link to the doc, right? I would summarize it for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it actually matters who's asking, and it matters who's answering, right? If I'm the product manager and I give an extremely detailed technical answer, and people might not necessarily believe it, right? You want somebody with credibility, unless I'm deeply technical, you want somebody with credibility to talk through that. And, what we found in talking with users is, even at some of these companies that have like internal search tools and they can search across documents and talk to documents, they still ask people questions. And the reason is because we as humans are designed to, we put credibility in a person, right? I know your expertise is this, and I know the document says it, but I want to hear you say it.
Yeah, so that's
right?
the process there, like step one, step two, step four.
Yep,
and I was like, okay, let me just make sure to
just double check. And sometimes I talk to you and you're like, no, ignore the document. That's out of date, right? Here's my take.
Or just follow the document.
Exactly. Yeah. But I want to make sure. So if my boss asks me, it's like, that's what Rowan said. I asked him. And so, when we think about knowledge, it's like, there is this stuff in document trackers and in documents and in project management trackers, but the real source of truth is all in people's heads. And how can we get as close to that as possible and get a model of that we can actually use with AI? That's the real source of truth that we work with. So it's something we're really excited about. So that's kind of the middle layer. And then for the outputs, thinking about, okay, we can start off in Slack. Can we expand to email? Can this help, document some of this real-time knowledge that we're getting and expand to documents too? Eventually things like meetings, right? Sending a digital version of yourself to a meeting is something that it's a personal pipe dream of ours. It might be quite a ways off. But we think that there's this opportunity to, we see the future of organizations is I, as a human, don't spend any time on busy work. I don't spend any time. I don't need to even ask questions to people because my AI version of me knows what I know and it knows the gaps in my knowledge and it services me information automatically. It knows who I need to follow up with. It already followed up with you and your AI version of follow came back. And it's kind of all of us get to act almost like we're the CEO of a company with an army of assistants.
Just one question. When I was talking to you on the message, was you or is it a bot?
You can always tell if it's a human or a bot. So there's this episode of Silicon Valley where they create a version of this, actually, AI Guilfoyle and AI didn't.
Yeah, I watched it there.
The bots start talking to each other.
And then they're like, the coffee, you just answered me the entire day.
Right, exactly. Yeah. What are you doing here? So yeah, I love that episode personally. It's cool to see where it goes. But yeah, I think there's a cool version of once everybody on the team has their own bot, like you have all the information you need, you have all the context you need, and at any time, like you don't need to spend any time on busy work. It's all kind of taken care of. And I mean, imagine a world without meetings? How great would that be? Like you never need to meet anyone. You just know it's already kind of decided and it has all the information you need.
It's nice.
So we're really excited about it. And I think this is like a much better world of work. And it's going to make companies way more efficient too. You can focus on the things that really matter.
The creative part and the things that the AI cannot do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about that. A lot of people are worried about the future of work and AI and how AI is going to impact that. And I'm super excited about it. Like, I can't wait for a world where I don't need to do any of the busy work or, I never need to send another follow-up or schedule another meeting.
I want to know about who is your team, who is your co-founder, and I want to understand what is your stage of investment right now.
Absolutely. So I am extremely lucky to have an incredible co-founder. My co-founder's name is Manu. So he's been doing it for a very long time, long before this current AI wave, and kind of has seen all the different AI waves ride through. This is his fourth time founding a company. And we met through the On Deck Fellowship. We both, I came into the On Deck Fellowship at the time I was working on AI music. And we bonded over this vision of a future of work and a future of digital workers and knowledge. And we both talked about kind of all the inefficiencies we had seen within organizations that we had worked at. And we're like, man, wouldn't it be cool if AI could go after this? And then, we were part of the On Deck Fellowship, which is it's a program for founders. It's people from all over the world, folks that are kind of early in their company founding journey, but excited for something they want to work on. We bonded over this vision and then created a demo in a single day, presented it to everyone at the On Deck Fellowship. We actually got 4 paying customers that day, just based on a PowerPoint, and a couple slides, and hyped people up and said, all right, are you going to pay for this? And it's an amazing community. So we got people to pay for it. We got a bunch of downloads that day, got voted, best presentation, best product. And then it was actually really funny at the end of the program, across 80 founders, they vote on superlatives. So, most likely to be this, most likely to be that. And I got most likely to be a billionaire. I'm not quite sure about that. Who knows? Let's see. But Manu got voted most likely to become a cult leader, which is an incredible combo. It's like, all right, power combo. We got the cult and then the money, put them together. But he's going to send in a video. He has a lot of thoughts about the vision and future of our company, as well as the changes in AI and machine learning over time.
My name is Manu Ebert. I am an entrepreneur and machine learning engineer. I built my first chatbot when I was 14, almost 25 years ago. I knew the basic programming language. I wanted to build an artificial intelligence, and I thought, how hard could it be? So I went to the library and got a book on artificial intelligence, and it told me that I had to learn the Prolog programming language, which is a elegant, if somewhat dated way of building software that's really good at finding patterns in language and following rules and reasoning. And back then, that is how AI was done. It was thought that AI is basically a bunch of reasoning, and we spoon feed it information, what to reason about. It was cute, it worked at the time. If you used at least a very specific syntax, it would understand what you said, it would remember that. We used to pass the AI around on a floppy disk, and you could afterwards ask it what other people said about yet other people in your school. And remember, we're all 14-year-old boys, so the result was probably less than wholesome, but it felt magic. And that was my first introduction to AI. A couple of years later, when I went to college, I started studying cognitive science. And it was pitched to me as, let's understand how the brain works and the human mind works and get computers to do the same. With always kind of the caveat of, but it's probably not going to work. That was the second AI winter. And basically we tried neural networks for a bit in the 90s that didn't really get anywhere. Nobody had any good idea for how to make progress in the field of AI for over a decade. And that's when I started to do that seriously. It wasn't until a few years later that deep learning methods were invented, and not until yet another decade that we found a way to represent words with numbers in a way that preserves their meaning. Meanwhile, I ended up in San Francisco. I started a consulting firm specializing on bringing natural language processing to companies in production, which back in like 2012, 2014, nobody was doing. You couldn't do machine learning in production, at least no like natural language processing. The tools weren't there yet. Nowadays, when I'm looking back at this time, like everything I did 10 years ago would have been a magnitude simpler with the technology that we have now. And that's why a lot of my colleagues who have been in this for a really long time feel like kids in a candy shop. We finally have the technology to do all the things that we wanted to do a really long time ago. So I think the challenge that AI is facing, the problem of AI, is not a limitation of the technology. AI's biggest problem right now is that we're living on a borrowed vision. We have those ideas about AI and robots that come from, all the way back movies like Metropolis 100 years ago, to the Jetsons, to Her, as AI being those, artificial humans. And that's why now we have 1 million chatbots. But is that really the best we can do with the technology that we have? Is that really the most we can get out of it, and the most helpful use of the advances that we made in machine learning in the last couple of years? And I wager it isn't. I think if we rethink how we want to use this technology, how we want to apply it, how we want to work with it, how we want to interface with it, we can generate so much more value and build so much more interesting products in AI that are not just yet another chatbot.
We really were on the same page with our vision, how we wanted to approach it, the kind of company we wanted to build, and our experience. I've spent a number of years in B2B SaaS and kind of have a lot of experience there. He has deep experience in machine learning. He's founded a bunch of startups. And from there, I actually decided that, hey, I want to put this music work to the side. I'm so excited about working with this person and on this idea. I want to kind of jump all in and go after it. And so, from there, we were funded by F4 Capital, which has been an incredible partner for us. They are a pre-seed and seed fund. They invested around $500,000 in us to start off with, and we joined their founder and residence program. And then things have been moving quickly. I mean, we only incorporated a month and a half ago, so still very, very new and very early. But the space is changing so quickly, and there's so many new things coming out every day that it's just like a race. You never the board is always shifting beneath you, and so we've been really focused on just how can we go after it, how can we chase after every new opportunity, talk with as many customers as possible. Make sure that we're solving their problems and that we're like really, really, really getting in deep and getting the nuance of like, okay, why do we get this answer instead of that answer? Why can we send this follow-up? Can we push the models a little bit further? And it's been fun. I'm like, I think the cool thing for myself is, I'm not an engineer by training, but people say the new coolest coding language is English, and I've gotten to contribute a lot to the technical side by, kind of fine tuning these prompts and adjusting the prompts, thinking about thinking really deeply about the questions that get asked in the org and how information flows and different situations. It's every day is new, every day is different. But yeah, I mean, we're very lucky to have an amazing co-founder and very lucky to have incredible partners in It4. They've really been in the trenches with us since day zero. I mean, they invested in us when it wasn't even confirmed that Manu would be my full-time co-founder. We didn't even have a legal entity at the time. They had a saved document for his investment, and they just wrote my name instead of the company name. And so they're incredible. I mean, to have they say that it's never too early for them, and they really stick with what they're saying there. And they've just been able to intro us to so many different folks that have helped out. And so, yeah, it's been quite a journey, and we're excited to see where it's going to go from here.
That's awesome. And then what is the vision for investors when they're looking for an AI company? Because you have been investing in other companies as well. What is your vision? And also, what do you think the other investor vision regarding to AI companies? Are they scared? Are they excited? Or are they like, yes, no? Or how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, so I can give a couple answers for this. I think the first answer is that everyone is kind of figuring it out, to be honest. I think there are, I have a lot of friends that are investors. We've talked with a number of investors. Everyone is surprised to some extent as things happen. I mean, if you listen to the folks at OpenAI talk about it, even the folks who were working on ChatGPT, they didn't think it was going to explode. It surprised everybody else and surprised the rest of the world, but even the people that were working on it didn't realize what they had. They were trying to create a research preview. And so if the people who are building these things are surprised by it, imagine all the rest of us that are adjusting to it. I think there's this big debate right now so there's a few different mental models that are useful. I think AI it's a new type of computer, right? Previously, we had kind of computers that were deterministic, right? And really good at solving logic puzzles and using math, things called von Neumann machines, right? Where they're focused on kind of getting deterministic outcomes. And now we have this whole new kind of computer that is creative and non-deterministic. And, before AI came out, there was this big debate of, oh, well, will AI ever create music or poetry? I remember having these conversations as kids. It's like, well, we have an answer now, right?
Yeah.
And it's also really cool to see how creative it can get. There was a case recently where this airline had an AI chatbot for customer service, and bereavement leave is this common thing that airlines will have. If a loved one passes away, they're able to give you a bereavement policy and give discounts on flights. And they actually didn't have this policy, but the chatbot felt so badly for the person they were talking to that it made up a new policy and said, oh yeah, we have this policy, and offered it to the person. And there was another example where a car company, I think it was Chevy, they had a chatbot, right? And the customer was asking about environmentally friendly options, and the chatbot tried to convince this person to buy a Tesla instead. Like, oh, it's environmentally friendly, try the Tesla.
I saw some lawyers that were doing using ChatGPT to create a petition or whatever they're doing, and they just make up laws.
Right.
If you don't find the law, just create one.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's crazy. And some people look at this and they say, oh, that's terrible. It's like, on the other flip side, it's like, wow, this is actually a completely new kind of computer and a completely new way of approaching computation, and opens up all these opportunities that we haven't had before. And so, when I think about that, it's like this massive new door has been opened. A lot of things that we've held to be true in the previous generations of computing, whether you think about the SaaS era or even the growth of the internet, I'm not actually sure they're going to be true anymore. And so I think that you're going to see, for example, the rise of, we've talked about the one-person billion-dollar company, right? It's easier than ever to create AI apps, and you don't need to be technical anymore to build this. And I think we're going to see a lot of companies that actually don't even need venture funding at all, and kind of are just built from the ground up. I think you'll also see a second category of companies that are funded in more creative ways. I have some friends right now that are looking to build an AI, but they don't want to take VC money because they're like, well, I'm not sure if I'll get $1 billion outcome or a $10 billion outcome. I actually want to build a profitable business, which, if you're aiming for a VC outcomes of, massive kind of home runs.
Yeah.
It's like profits. Whoa. Building a profitable business, you don't want to do that until you get an IPO. But people are starting to think about it like, hey, with AI, can I build a $100 million business that's incredibly profitable and distribute cash back to investors? Are there things?
Small turn, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And for forever, we've kind of had this in Silicon Valley. It's like, well, we've had this idea that everybody should be VC backed and everybody should receive VC funding. And then, on the other hand, you have like bank loans, right? Which are can be hard to get. And I think you're seeing a lot of experimentation in the middle there.
Right.
And I think that opens up a lot of cool opportunities for people who aren't VC investors. My friend's company, I would love to invest and get distributed profits along the way. It doesn't have to be a massive outcome. So I think there's this whole new category of companies I think that you're going to see that aren't actually a good fit for the venture model at all. For the venture model itself, I think it all comes down to, like I talked about earlier, it's taking something messy and simplifying it. So you are never going to beat OpenAI at their models, right? And you probably shouldn't be trying to build tooling around their models. Like, Sam Altman has the saying, if the model gets 100 times better, is that good for your startup and bad for your startup? And I think where you get the most value is, how do you understand the business process, solve the business process, get deep into the weeds, take this thing that's incredibly complex and make it simple, and then you just plug the model into that. Those are the companies I'm investing in. Those are the companies I'm most excited about, because that hard work that you're doing to understand, like the work that we're doing to understand, every kind of question imaginable and follow up and all the different kind of conversations that can happen in Slack and bucket them into dozens of different types. That's something that creates a moat for you that other people can't necessarily replicate. And so for me, that's what I look for, is like really, really getting into the weeds, using this as a tool, but becoming an expert in the business domain. It's just another tool. And then I think the second thing is folks thinking creatively about, like we said, new kinds of business models, new kinds of funding models, building a bunch of, I think there's going to be a huge number of micro startups that you'll see. And if you're a venture investor, those probably don't make sense. But if you're putting $10,000 into a friend's startup and you're okay with a much smaller outcome, maybe that actually makes a lot of sense. And maybe we're going to see a number of these. So it's a fascinating landscape. I'm so happy to be alive at this time and be in San Francisco and part of this environment. And it's been really fun to kind of see all the different crazy creative ideas that people are coming up with.
And what about the SaaS companies? How do you think they're going to be with this new wave of AI? Do you think the big ones are going to try to adapt, or the small ones that are built based on AI are going to take over this big SaaS companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, when we think about B2B SaaS and the last platform shift, the shift to cloud, it really changed the landscape, and it opened up so many companies that could kind of enter. It was really hard for the existing players who are focused on on-prem to then move into cloud. I think you're going to see a similar shift here, but the evolution here is that right now, so when you think about software right now and SaaS right now, you have to do a lot of customization. Different companies want different features. Some use it in this way, some use it in that way. And you end up with these massive platforms that have a million different features because they want to be able to sell to every imaginable company. And then you end up getting a super bloated piece of software. I think of Jira as a great example of this. Jira does everything possible and imaginable, but it's kind of clunky because it has so many different features now. And then you get something like Linear that strips it all down and then starts from scratch again. It's simple and it's easy to use. But then over time, that's going to get more complicated. It's like the SaaS circle of life, right? It's like you build something simple, you add a million features to try to please everyone, and then eventually it becomes hard to use, and then a new simple competitor comes out. And that's been really good for startups, right? Because at any time, you can be the simplified Salesforce, the simplified Jira. I think, though, that relies on you building a monolithic product that works for every customer, and maybe some customization. I think the future is you actually have customization at the edges that AI does automatically. So imagine if when you log into your SaaS application, whether it's the future Salesforce, Linear, or whatever, it automatically knows what your UI preferences are. It knows which features are relevant to you, which ones aren't, which ones you care about, which ones you don't. and it's completely personalized. You don't see anything that's not relevant for you. And if suddenly you need to do something that you can't do, boom, a button appears. Yeah, a button appears, and then suddenly you can do it, right? I think the future is this kind of UI, and this layer on top of it is dynamic for each individual company, each individual user. Okay, so then the question is, so if that's all happening at the edges, then what are the companies actually doing? What we believe, and what I personally believe, is that you can think of every company in the future as just like an API, right? You can send a request to it and you get something back, and then it gets customized at the edges. And so the question will be, what is the unique data that you as a company have that you can send in that API request that will get reconfigured in whatever way you want on the other edge? And what is the unique data you can pull in? For our company, that unique data is this digital version of you. And exactly. And we believe that no matter what it looks like on your end, being able to send that information and receive that information is going to be useful. But I think that's ultimately how you're going to capture value in the new world is, do you have data that nobody else has? Can you process it in a way that nobody else has? And how quickly do you make this transformation to actually having unique data? Actually, another good opportunity for a business model is, can you get a new source of data and turn that into this API, digitize it in a way nobody did before? I used to work at Checker, and they did background checks through an API. And the background check process is, in some counties, you need to send a physical person in person to the court office to get that background check and check it. And what Checker did was said, okay, we're going to take this complicated physical thing and we're just going to connect it to an API. And I think you're going to see more and more companies like that kind of the digital world keeps expanding. And if you can connect the messy physical world or something else to the digital world, it doesn't matter what the user experience looks like, right? As long as you can give them that data. I think that's the future of SaaS. And I think that leads to very, very different companies and a very different way of operating in the future. And there's going to need to be transformation across all these players. It really takes time.
It is something that is building on the goal.
Exactly. But I think it's really exciting. Some people say that, AI is just going to serve the incumbents. It's, SaaS is dead. I think this is one of the most exciting times for SaaS because you can completely reimagine how businesses work with each other and how SaaS businesses operate.
So you're based here in San Francisco.
I am. Yep.
And how do you think is AI doing right now here? And how is your interaction with other companies that are doing AI here in San Francisco?
Yeah, there is no better place in the world to be in San Francisco. I think the second best place is online. All right, you can find a lot if you're watching this and you're in a country far away and you're like, well, I would love to go to San Francisco, but I can't because of the visa. Online is the second best place to be. There's a lot of incredible innovation happening in Discords and chat rooms and over Twitter Spaces, and there's all these different spaces online. But just physically being here in San Francisco, San Francisco is less than 1 million people. It's crazy, we forget this, but it's actually a fairly small city, especially by international standards. San Francisco is like 3% the size of a city like Shanghai, or Mumbai, or some of these other megacities in the world. But the concentration of people here working on cool stuff is just absolutely unbelievable. You will, there are hackathons here where you'll see the next generation of companies being built in front of your eyes. There are, all the big companies are based here. You got OpenAI, Anthropic, all of that. And it's this massive petri dish of people exchanging ideas and talking about it. And, you almost can't escape it. I went to a party recently and they had a big sign and they said, this is a no AI party. You're not allowed to talk about AI here. Try talking about the weather or current events or TV shows. I know it sounds crazy for people who haven't been to San Francisco, but this is really the reality. It's
It's how we met. We're in the party, and then I was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And
exactly. We started jamming about AI.
Yeah, you're in the previous solution you did before, and then we started to talk about that. That was exactly like that.
It's so fun. Yeah, it was incredible. And look, here we are having the conversation about it. And so if you can get to San Francisco and you're interested in working on AI, there's no better place in the world. I was nomadic for 3.5 years. I actually moved here about 6 months ago. And travel all over the country and the world. And I had an amazing experience. I had a remote job the whole time. I spent a lot of time online, kind of working on these, exchanging ideas. but there's still something about being in the physical world where you can have these, it's much harder to ignore somebody when they're right in front of you at a party talking to you and asking a question. It's much easier to ignore a random LinkedIn request or somebody in a Discord. And so I think physically being here in these spaces, you can just end up in conversations, in spaces, talking to people, working on things in ways you never could being outside. I met my last co-founders at a hackathon. I showed up to this music and AI hackathon, as a not super technical person with just an idea, and met some folks there, and then we started a company together and started building it. And it's these chance encounters that happen in San Francisco. I think we're going to look back at this period in like 20, 30, 40 years and be like, wow, what a time to be alive in San Francisco, in the 2020s as the birth of all this is happening.
Between 90s and 20s, the big W.
The dot-com boom.
The dot-com boom.
Yeah. It's like that, but it's even bigger. I think it's much bigger than the dot-com boom will be. And I think
the world's already digitalized, and then we are putting another layer.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there weren't that many people online. I think it was like 30 million people online in 1994. And so, when you think about, there's 6 billion people online right now. So much of the world is digitized. To be physically here within a few miles of where AGI gets born, like, you can't ask for anything else. And the next generation of companies, the Googles and Facebooks of the world, are being born right now within a few miles of where we're standing here and having this conversation. So it's an incredible place.
And for people that want to get more involved with AI, want to build something or want to just learn more, what do you suggest for them?
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway I've had in building an AI, I mentioned I started off in 2021. I was learning about AI. I was interested in it. And I spent a lot of time reading about AI and learning about it and watching courses online and getting into it. And, what's this podcaster saying about it? What's this news? What's NVIDIA doing? What's this company doing? What's Google doing? And the moment I started actually building things with the technology, everything changed. It was a completely different experience getting your hands dirty and actually trying to build an application with it than experiencing it from the outside. And I think that's my biggest piece of advice for people. Like, there's all this hype around and there's all these people talking about it, but the ratio of people building hype to the ratio of people actually using these tools and actually building things, it's just this massive imbalance. And, it's like that example I talked about before. Everybody's like, well, it's just a GPT wrapper. What's your moat? It's like, have you tried to build a GPT wrapper? This is actually incredibly challenging. And it's super messy. And once you get in and you start using these, all the hype disappears. You're like, oh, well, it's kind of cool if you get all these things working together and if things work the right way, but it also doesn't work 90% of the time and you need to fix that. But you see this potential, right? And then you have these magic moments where it starts working. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the future. And soon it's because it's so new. My co-founder's been doing machine learning for 12 years. And what he told me about generative AI, he's like, because it's so new, there are no experts in this technology. They don't exist, right? This just started now. And it's just happening and it's changing every day. So even if you became an expert in, GPT 3.5, GPT 4 is a whole different ballgame. GPT 4.0 is a different ballgame. And so I think anybody can get in on the ground right now. If you're a non-technical person, that's no longer an excuse, right? There's so many no-code tools. There's so many low-code tools. You just getting really good at prompt engineering is a great way to do it. And just start building. It's easier than ever to build really, really, really cool stuff with this. And, I feel like every day I hear about a new use for AI. I had a friend the other day, he said, when he goes to restaurants, he just takes a picture of the menu and uploads it to AI and then asks AI to cross-reference all the reviews and tell him what he should order, and it spits that out. And that could be a product. Yeah. My gosh, there's, I uploaded, I got a blood test recently and uploaded that to AI and have it give me a summary of this also. That could be a product.
I have a blood test a few days ago and I was thinking I actually should copy and paste that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's
because there's little codes that I don't understand and the doctor are going to be in a couple of days. And I was like, no, I want to understand.
Yeah, I want the answer now. Yeah. And so, it's just it's, you don't need to mine for gold. It's lying all over on the ground. all these little use cases, that could be a product. And you don't even need to raise VC funding for it.
Yeah.
Create a website, have a meal picker, whatever app, and then you just take a picture of it and uploads it, or the blood test thing, or there was a website called Chat with PDF that was doing millions in revenue. That was just, you talk with a PDF. It's simple, it's straightforward. And so that's what I would recommend. Is like,
and then this can grow to other applications as well, and then also can be purchased for another company, can be acquired for another company.
Exactly.
You never know.
Oh my gosh, there's so many opportunities now, and you do not need to be technical to start. You don't need investment to start. You don't need a co-founder to start. All you need is like an internet connection. You don't even need to speak English to start. Like these LLMs now can they could translate into any language. They could do transcription in other languages. They can, I'm sure this video you could watch in whatever language you want.
Yep.
And so, it's this moment where all you really need is an internet connection and, like, I guess being able to read and write. That's it, right? Anyone who's watching this can build something today. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, your level of education, technical skill, anything. You can build something with this, and you definitely should, because so many people are talking about it and not building anything. And you will probably within 5 or 10 minutes be able to build something that nobody else has built before. And like this is the bleeding edge right now. It's all happening. It's all new and different, and it's continuing to be new and different, right? The big companies are not going to stop releasing models anytime soon. When GPT-5 gets released, that's going to be another wave. And the sooner you get involved with it, and the sooner you can kind of ride the wave and adopt these technologies as they come, I just think it's a huge opportunity. I'm so excited to see what people all over the world create. So you also don't need to be in San Francisco. I mean, it's great to being in San Francisco, but I think there's incredible spaces online that are happening, and there's a million Discords, and there are people building things with distributed teams all over the world that they've never met in person, and they're working together. Or it could just be you, right? Like, just start building. Just start any problem that you can think of. There's probably a way to use AI for that. So
yeah, this conversation just make me excited to start to build.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah, I think for me, like, quitting my job and starting working on it was just like, it was a phase change in my life, and it changed everything. So I'm excited to see what you build too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah,
Conor, thank you so much for being here. Share your thoughts, share this excitement to people that want to go involved with AI and show your perspective. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rowan.
Yeah.
It's great chatting.
Yeah. And guys, see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.